Well, howdy there, stranger. I'm Jordi.
And I'm Brad.
And welcome back to Beers with Queers, the true crime podcast where I research a case and Brad here, and potentially you guys
don't know a damn thing about it. Except this week, I do. That's right, it's another Brad episode, and this may be the most Brad episode yet. So let's just kick this off with a question. Jordi, do you know what they call something that seems to be contradictory to what everyone expects it to be, yet it is just what it is?
Not off the top of my head.
It's called a paradox, coming from the Latin word of paradoxos, with para meaning beyond or outside of, with the verb dokon meaning to think, forming paradoxos, an adjective meaning contrary to expectation.
Well, there you go. You learn something new every day.
And today's case is just that, a complete paradox. Two things that, based on all reasonable expectations, should mix about as well as oil and water. But not only do they mix, these two unlikely allies would go on to be part of one of the most highly publicized crimes in American history. A crime that not only shocked everyone here in the United States, but took center stage news across the world, leading everyone on the planet to asking, WTF is going on in America? And with that, let's just get into it. Jordi, have you ever heard of Sergeant Miles?
I have not heard of Sergeant Miles.
I'm going to let you read his IMDb bio, and it's short and sweet.
Sergeant Miles was born on February 28, 1983 in Stanislaus County, California, USA. He's an actor. So when they say short and sweet, they really mean it.
Well, since you haven't ever heard of him, maybe you will recognize him. I'm going to show you a picture here, and you give me a good description of what you see. And we'll put the picture up on the social media so you can see it yourself.
I see a big, beefy white man with very prominent pecs, abs, bugs tattoos on his pecs, and then wearing Calvin Klein underwear with, of course, tasteful pubes showing, and he's looking very
daddy.
Yeah, very daddy, and also he is eye-humping the camera. There we go. I was trying to figure out a way to say it without saying a curse word. But yeah, it looks like, I'm going to be honest, looks like a porn star.
So Sergeant Miles is actually Stephen Charles Miles. Miles is a retired Army veteran who served for over 2 years in Iraq before he was shot in 2006 and retired from the military. In 2013, Miles began working in the adult gay film industry. So there you go, Jordi, you got it.
I can clock a daddy from anywhere.
And he starred in films from some of the most popular major studios such as Men.com, Raging Stallion, Lucas Entertainment, Hot House, and more. He has an impressive 11 years career appearing as a versatile role in at least 434 videos. During that time, he actually garnered more fame as he's gotten older and entered his daddy era, receiving numerous accolades and nominations from adult film industry awards. Starting in 2018, the Gay VN nominated him for Best Duo Sex Scene with Breeding Prince Charming in 2017, Best Fetish Scene with Gentleman 19, Hard at Work, 2017, Best Supporting Actor, Breeding Prince Charming, 2017, and Fan Award, Favorite Daddy. In 2019, the Grabby Awards nominated him for Best Bi Sex Scene in Coming Out Bi 4, 2018, Best Fetish Sex Scene, Sexual Harassment, 2018, and Best Supporting Actor, Graduation in 2018. And in 2020, the Cyber Socket Awards nominated him Best Porn Star.
There we go. I mean, it doesn't get better than that, especially if you are an adult entertainer. Winning Best Porn Star.
Nominated for Best Porn.
Well, even,
I mean, get nominated.
I was about to say, it's like they say at the Oscars, it is an honor just to be nominated. And it really is.
But all of that nearly came to an end back in December of 2020 when Miles developed a testicle infection after having hernia surgery. The doctors were able to get the infection under control, but not before it did potentially incurable damage to his penis. One of the doctors told him that he may never have an erection again. Not only was that devastating news career-wise for a male porn star, but just as a man, Miles says he couldn't stop ruminating on his potentially incurable erectile dysfunction. And I would be the same way. Is not being able to perform intercourse the end of the world? No. Personally, I'm a make-out and foreplay kind of guy myself over everything else. But to know I could never do that again, that would be a hard pill to swallow. Really, losing the ability to do anything you enjoy is going to be hard. I mean, if someone told me today that you can never go snowboarding again, I'd probably cry. And that's something I just do a few times a year. And this is like a 5 to 6 times a day kind of thing for me. So I would feel like this is a major loss. Plus, as a man, there is so much of a cultural emphasis on sex and men being able to perform that erectile dysfunction can be devastating to a man's sexual identity and mental health. Men who suffer from ED have a much higher likelihood to have decreased self-confidence and feelings of self-worth, feelings of isolation and loneliness, rumination and catastrophizing, and a more negative body image. But Miles had been seriously injured before when he was shot overseas, even having to learn to walk again. So he didn't just give up. Even when the doctors were telling him to expect the worst, he started a combination of therapies, the first being called Gaines Wave, which delivers electric shocks to the penis to boost erections by stimulating blood vessels so blood flows through them more easily, while also helping new blood vessels to grow, allowing for longer, stronger erections. He then incorporated platelet shots, which uses the patient's own blood to stimulate blood vessel growth. Over time, Miles was able to recover and perform sexually like he did prior to his injury. With that, he was back in action, literally. He went on to own his own adult film studio, Sargent Productions, and in 2022, the Transgender Erotica Awards show nominated him Hottest Daddy and Hottest Top. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, this is all very interesting, but this is a true crime podcast, so what the heck is going on here? I think the best way to kick this off is to go back and visit something that we briefly touched on before. Jordi, I know that you are an IMDb fanatic.
That is true. I am a movie buff, so I use it every day.
He is normally reading the IMDb on a movie before the initial credits roll, and the next thing you know, he's telling you all kinds of stuff about the movie, the actors, the little things that most people would never even know of. So I think I know the answer to this, but for the audience out there, what is your favorite section on an IMDb page?
Probably the trivia section.
I knew it. It was the trivia. So to kick off this next section of the episode, would you read the trivia section of the official IMDb page for Sergeant Miles?
Sure. Let's see what interesting trivia awaits us for Sergeant Miles. Sergeant Miles trivia. He is a member of the Proud Boys, a neo-fascist white nationalist organization established in the United States in 2016. Was arrested by U.S. federal police in April 2022 for his role in the storming of the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Video and photographic footage show him inside the Capitol the day of the insurrection. Oh, it's literally like that meme. Oh.
And just like that, we slip comfortably into a Brad episode. Jordi, did you have any clue this was where we were heading today?
Not at all. I didn't have a single clue. I was wondering because you said it was a case that shocked the nation. And so I was like, well, then I've obviously heard of it. And I mean, I've heard of the storming of the Capitol on January 6th, but I did not know a very prominent gay adult entertainer was also there and involved. So, no, it's a nice little plot twist.
You know, I like to keep you on your toes and just a little bit uncomfortable. And so this next part is going to get way more uncomfortable. So I think everyone listening here's first question is, How the heck is a gay porn star a member of the Proud Boys? I mean, I thought gay people were kind of on their list of things I must hate today. But when I researched if the Proud Boys were anti-gay, I was actually quite surprised. It states specifically in their rules of membership that, and this is a quote from the text, any man, no matter his race or sexual orientation, can join the fraternal organization as long as they recognize that white men are not the problem. And not gonna lie, I was just like,
Well, I'm glad to see that in 2024, Ku Klux Klan members essentially are so open to acceptance.
And I mean, I've seen them at protests, at queer events, online and everything. I've never seen them personally, thankfully, but I've seen it online. So just reading that was very confusing to me. And I mean, did you assume that the Proud Boys were anti-gay?
I assume that the Proud Boys are anti anything that is not a white Christian.
That's also what I thought, but honestly, besides the snippets I've seen on social media, I really didn't know much about them. So before we jump into what happened at the Capitol with our gay porn star turned neo-fascist insurrectionists, let's dive into just who the Proud Boys are. And before you're like, holy shit, am I about to get a pro-Proud Boys talk? The answer to that is no. There's a lot of highly problematic aspects to the group, and we will talk about all that. And before you skip this section of the episode thinking, I know all I need to know about the Proud Boys, do you know about the 5 breakfast cereals?
No, I don't know what the Proud Boys have to do with breakfast cereals, so this is a giant puzzle of weird information.
Or the reason why members are only limited to masturbating once a month?
Nope.
You're about to find out. The group originated on the website for the far-right Talkies magazine in 2016 under the leadership of the Vice Media co-founder and former commentator Gavin McInnes. McInnes came up with the name Proud Boys from the song Proud of Your Boy, originally created for Disney's 1992 film Aladdin, but that was left out because of story changes in production, and later featured in the 2011 musical adaptation. In the song, Aladdin apologizes to his mother for being a bad son and promises to make her proud. McInnes interprets it as Aladdin's apologizing for being a boy. He first heard it while attending his daughter's school music recital. The song's, quote, fake, humble, and self-serving lyrics became a running theme on his podcast. McInnes said it was the most annoying song in the world, but he couldn't get enough of it. It existed first informally on the web before it had its first gathering of the Brooklyn chapter in July of 2016, which subsequently resulted in a brawl in the bar where they met. One of the central ideas around the Proud Boys movement is that white men and Western culture are under siege. McInnes described members as Western chauvinists who refuse to apologize for creating the modern world, and who long for the days when girls were girls and men were men. Once initiated into the Proud Boys, the initiates must adhere to certain rules, including no use of opioids or methamphetamine. They didn't say anything about cocaine, by the way. No wearing cargo shorts.
Can you really trust someone that wears cargo shorts? No one needs that many pockets.
I didn't really see why they said no cargo shorts, but I think it's just because, like, cargo shorts scream, like, dad and, like, you know, kind
We're
of...
boys. We're proud boys. We're not proud dads.
I just think it's like, they're like, I don't want to be like that, what everybody thinks, that older, you know, it's just the dad in the backyard cooking on the grill and stuff. But that's just a guess. But anyway, they cannot wear cargo shorts. And no heterosexual brother of the fraternity shall masturbate more than one time in any calendar month, and all members shall abstain from pornography. And for a second, you're like, why did they specifically say no heterosexual brother? Mm-hmm. But the reason for the masturbation and porn policy is to force men to go out and meet women so that they can procreate. And since gay sex can't produce offspring, the homosexual members can masturbate all they like.
So there you go. That is one of the perks of being homosexual, is if you want to join the Proud Boys, you can masturbate all you want.
When talking about these rules, McInnes said, though sexual intercourse is encouraged, Proud Boys have an end game, and it is to settle down and have kids. They have absolutely no respect for feminists, but venerate the housewife so much that they are actually becoming quite popular with women. The initiation into the Proud Boys has 4 levels. To obtain level 1, an initiate must publicly state, "I am a proud Western chauvinist. I refuse to apologize for creating the modern world." To reach level 2, the initiate must endure a beating by his comrades while reciting the names of 5 breakfast cereals. Initiates are told to limit masturbation to once per month and are banned from watching pornography. The idea of this ban is that porn is making men weak and keeping them from forming real relationships with women. To achieve the 3rd level, an initiate must get a Proud Boys tattoo. Common variations are Proud Boy, POYB, acronym for Proud of Your Boy, or Uhuru, a Swahili word for freedom that the Proud Boys have appropriated as their battle cry. The 4th and final level is an honorary degree awarded for a material sacrifice or service by a brother. McIne said in an interview that the 4th degree is awarded for a major fight for the cause. You get beat up, kick the crap out of Antifa. McIne said that obviously this doesn't mean that you go to someone's house and pick a fight, or even pick a fight with someone at a rally. The 4th degree is a consolation prize for being thrust into a shitty situation and surviving. In 2018, after a fight outside of a metropolitan Republican club involving Proud Boy members, Proud Boy leadership released a clarified set of bylaws that didn't sound like a call to violence. The new language reads, "Any requirement that a brother commit a violent or illegal act as a condition precedent to receiving the 4th degree is by this bylaw abolished." McIne began to separate himself from the Proud Boys after this incident, and in 2019, before Proud Boys John Kinsman and Maxwell Hare were convicted for their role in the 2018 fight, McIne announced that he would no longer be involved with the Proud Boys. From there, the leadership passed to Texas attorney Jason Van Dyke for a short time, and then he was replaced by Enrique Terrio, a Cuban-American from Miami. 2020 and the pandemic really brought the Proud Boys into the public eye and solidified their status as the most visible and most active right-wing extremist group in the country. As the country went into lockdown, the Proud Boys were regular sights at anti-lockdown, anti-vax protests. As everyone knows, at this time, much of the country was divided on how the government was dealing with the pandemic, and those that were in opposition of how things were being handled saw the Proud Boys standing up for what they believed in. Membership began to increase, and the Proud Boy protests and demonstrations began popping up all over the country. Also in 2020, after the death of George Floyd and the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement, the Proud Boys became major players as counterpoint to the protests, all of which was highly televised, bringing even more notoriety to the group and even more members from people who shared a similar stance on the movement. I don't have to explain to anyone that starting in 2020, there was a lot of fear, unrest, uncertainty, and violence, not only in the United States, but all over the world. And these are the perfect conditions for groups like this to gain power and notoriety. 2020 saw many violent clashes between the Proud Boys members and opposition, especially in Portland, Oregon, which saw over 100 days of continuous unrest. To many, the Proud Boys seemed like a violent gang of thugs, but to just as many, they looked like patriots that were standing up for their rights and protecting force against the civil unrest at the time. This sentiment was bolstered further when President Trump, in his September 29th debate against Joe Biden, instructed Proud Boys, "Stand back and stand by." To those that supported Trump, this technically gave the Proud Boys his blessing. Now, before we go forward with the story, let's take a quick look at the main concerns that people have with the Proud Boys. Firstly, racism. Although in 2020, the Southern Poverty Law Center elevated the Proud Boys to an official hate group, the FBI categorizes them as an extremist group with ties to white nationalism. Although this seems like very similar things, in the eyes of the law, it is very different. In America, the Proud Boys are not considered a white supremacy group, and publicly they denounce white supremacy. But they do have a lot of ties and work with a lot of known white supremacist groups and neo-Nazi groups. Now, Jordy, I'm going to have you read some quotes from Gavin McInnes, the founder of the Proud Boys, throughout this section, and I'm going to apologize for that in advance.
Well, I'm as ready as I'll ever be because this is already a wild case, so I have no expectations of what is about to be asked of me.
McInnes, the founder of the group, said on an episode of The Gavin McInnes Show that
we're the new N-word. Although he didn't say N-word, MAGA is the new black. If you like Trump, you are a black man in 1945 trying to have water at a liberal fountain.
Next is misogyny. Women cannot be part of the Proud Boys. They have their own group, the Proud Boys Girls. Members of the informal organization are overwhelmingly the wives and girlfriends of the Proud Boys. The ideal woman to the Proud Boys is a 1950s stay-at-home housewife. On the subject of women, McInnes has been quoted as saying,
women are lazy and less ambitious than men, and that the pay gap between women and men is due to the fact a woman would rather go to her daughter's piano recital than work. Women are magical, and birth is a magical thing. But the U.S. should have enforced monogamy because women are colostomy bags for various strangers' semen when they have sex outside of marriage. Feminism is a cancer that makes women ugly.
Islamophobia. The Proud Boys have a creed, the West is best, and many of the members share the idea that Muslims hate all non-Muslims, so there is no way to come to peace with them, and thus they are all enemies. McInnes has called the idea of a Muslim American president.
The idea of a Muslim American president is insane. And honestly, it's kind of like electing a German president in 1942 in America.
Anti-Semitism. Again, although McInnes denies racism and anti-Semitism, there are videos he has posted of himself giving the Nazi salute and repeatedly saying Heil Hitler. He also posted a video called 10 Things I Hate About Jews, which he later re-entitled 10 Things I Hate About Israel, as well as defending Holocaust deniers. He went on to talk with one quote saying,
God, they're so obsessed with the Holocaust. I don't know if it's healthy to dwell.
Transphobia. In a blog post McInnes titled Transphobia is Perfectly Natural, he wrote,
so before I read this, I just read through it really quick. Brief trigger warning, there is a very outdated slur for trans people, and it also mentions trans surgery in a negative light, so using different words than gender-affirming surgery. So maybe skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want to hear that. We're all transphobic, he said. Haven't you seen all the totally functional, happily married, normal trannies walking around? We see there are no old trannies. They die of drug overdoses and suicide way before they're 40, and nobody notices because nobody knows them. They are mentally ill gays who need help, and that doesn't include being maimed by physicians. In fact, the only thing more normal than castrating yourself and taking tons of hormones to grow your tits is chopping them off. He also referred to transgender people as, quote, gender insert the N-word and stupid lunatics.
So, not nice stuff all the way around.
So it's like if someone literally sat down with a book and they were like, what are all the different ways that I can be a total trash of a human being, the worst absolute scum of the earth? It's like someone's like, I want to see just how big of a scumbag I can be and think it's totally normal to just talk about people like this and not expect to be called out on it.
And again, McInnes is no longer the leader of the Proud Boys, but these are the ideals that the organization was created upon. Also, although McInnes is not technically in the leadership role, he communicates regularly with the members, makes appearances at some events, and tries to resolve infighting. Some Proud Boys affectionately refer to him as a godfather, so he still has a strong influence on the group. And by the way, the Proud Boys isn't just an American thing. I know everybody out there is like, them crazy Americans, but there are actually international chapters in Canada, Britain, Ireland, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Austria, and the Philippines. Okay, we got that all out of the way, and I do believe that that knowledge is relevant to today's case because if you look back during the pandemic, you can see some of the motivating factors that led Sergeant Miles to joining the Proud Boys and going on to join in the raid on the Capitol. Back in 2020, the government issued mandatory stay-at-home orders due to COVID-19, and this negatively impacted all kinds of businesses, including the porn industry. Adult film studios, including Miles' own Sargent Productions, were shut down as part of the lockdown. During this time, Miles took to social media to complain about the impact of the lockdown. Miles posted a video about food shortages in Venezuela and wrote, "To those that think keeping the economy shut down is a good idea, this guy articulates very well why this will be worse than the virus." Adding, "Lift this ban and let us work. You're literally killing us." He tagged both the Adult Performers Actors Guild, a federally recognized union for those working in the adult film industry, and the Free Speech Coalition, an advocacy group for adult performers, in the post.
Just a brief sidebar. I didn't know adult entertainers had their own acting guild. Honestly, that's an amazing step, and I love that they're getting the support that they need, because of course there's the regular actors guild, but the fact that there is an adult actors guild, that is just an awesome fact I didn't know.
They should have one. I mean,
it's a lucrative business.
It's probably doing better. Well, I'd say it is doing better in Hollywood in most aspects.
Most definitely.
APAG responded stating, "We are all under mandatory stay-at-home orders by our government. Free Speech Coalition could not possibly lift the moratorium when we aren't legally allowed to work. Performers, producers, directors, and crew members' health and safety are more important." The Free Speech Coalition provided guidelines to the industry earlier this month advising performers to stay at home, shoot only solo videos or with partners who live with them, and follow social distancing orders. Miles responded with, "The moratorium is causing people to die. Their blood is on yours and the government's hands." APAG responded back with, "The government called the moratorium by creating stay-at-home orders. We are all doing our best to help others to cope with this crisis. Again, I understand your anger, but it's misdirected. Mental health services are still available and we are happy to help." Of course, when you post stuff like this on social media, you're going to have others outside of the conversation respond in. And one of the users told Miles to just sign up for unemployment. Miles responded back, "I don't want to live off the government. I also want to go to state parks and live my life like I want, like an American." Miles already had a history of sparking online controversy with his tweets and engaging in public arguments, and for this reason there was an online movement started to boycott him. This prompted Lucas Entertainment CEOs Michael Lucas to tweet in defense of Sergeant Miles, telling people of his military service and how he had been wounded and almost lost his leg. But it wasn't just fans that were having mixed feelings about Miles with all of his outspoken views. He was also having issues with other performers in the industry, including adult performer Curtis Wolf. When Miles wrote, "Wolf was the worst scene partner I've ever worked with," Wolf responded by saying he was paid double to take one for the team and film a scene with Miles because no one was willing to work with him. After Trump lost the election, the Proud Boys rallied twice in Washington, D.C., once on November 14th and a second time on December 12th, which ended with 4 of the members suffering stab wounds. Which leads us to January 6, 2021. On this day, a joint session of the United States Congress convened at the Capitol, which is located at 1st Street Southeast in Washington, D.C. During the joint session, elected members of the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate were meeting in separate chambers of the Capitol to certify the vote count on the Electoral College of the 2020 presidential election, which had taken place on November 3rd in 2020. The joint session began at approximately 1 p.m. Shortly thereafter, by approximately 1:30 p.m., the House and the Senate adjourned to separate chambers to resolve a particular objection. Vice President Mike Pence was present and presiding, first in the joint session and then in the Senate chamber. As the proceedings continued in both the House and the Senate, with the Vice President Pence present and presiding over the Senate, a large crowd gathered outside of the Capitol. Temporary and permanent barricades were in place around the exterior of the Capitol building, and the U.S. Capitol Police were also present and attempting to keep the crowd away from the Capitol building and the proceedings underway inside. At such time, the certification proceedings were still underway and the exterior doors and windows of the Capitol were locked or otherwise secured. Members of the U.S. Capitol Police attempted to maintain order and to keep the crowd from entering the Capitol. However, shortly after 2 p.m., individuals in the crowd forced entry into the Capitol, including by breaking windows and by assaulting members of the U.S. Capitol Police, as others in the crowd encouraged and assisted with those acts. Shortly thereafter, at approximately 2:20, members of the House and Senate, including Vice President Pence, were instructed and did evacuate the chambers. Shortly after the raid, the FBI received a tip regarding 2 individuals involved with the attack on the U.S. Capitol building from a woman who said that she had met 2 men and posed for a photograph with them. She explained that the one on the right was from Portland and the man on the left in the photograph was from New Orleans, Louisiana. The witness heard the men saying, among other things, that they had broken into the Capitol building by breaking a window. She provided the picture, and the man on the right was Sergeant Miles, wearing a red "Make America Great Again" baseball hat, a tan camouflage jacket with a patch that read Miles on his left sleeve, navy gloves, camouflage pants, a backpack, and tan boots. In other video and photographs, Miles can be seen wearing a black shirt that reads "Trump 2020, F your feelings," although it doesn't say it that way, and his backpack case. The man on the left was Matthew LeBrun of New Orleans, Louisiana. With this, the FBI was able to track both Miles and LeBrun's movements throughout the whole thing, thanks to so much media coverage and security cameras in the area. Eventually, both the men made their way to the restricted grounds on the west front of the U.S. Capitol. On the west front, Miles and the other rioters then engaged in a confrontation with police officers who were protecting the Capitol. During this confrontation, Miles shoved and attempted to punch police officers. All of this is caught on camera, by the way. Miles and LeBrun eventually maneuvered their way up to a staircase inside of scaffolding on the northwest side of the Capitol, and at approximately 2:10, both traveled up the staircase from the west front to the upper west terrace of the Capitol. At approximately 2:12 p.m., U.S. Capitol CCTV footage depicts individuals banging on Senate wing door and windows on either side of the door with their fists and other blunt items, including planks of wood and a U.S. Capitol Police riot shield. Within 1 minute, rioters successfully smashed in a window on one side of the Senate wing doors and unlawfully entered the U.S. Capitol building. A handful of people entered the building through the broken window and then opened the Senate wing door. They were the first to breach the interior of the Capitol. Meanwhile, other rioters, including Miles, continued to smash windows on the other side of the Senate wing door. CCTV footage captures Miles smashing a plank of wood into one of the windows and then entering the Capitol building through it, shortly followed by LeBrun. Security footage from inside the Capitol building showed both Miles and LeBrun inside, and cell phone records from both of them corroborated their locations at this time. In the end, Miles pleaded guilty to a felony charge of assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain law enforcement officers, and on October 19, 2023, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison, 12 months of supervised release, and ordered to pay $2,000 in restitution. According to his court documents, Miles accepted full responsibility for the crime which he committed and said he was humbled and humiliated. However, it wasn't long thereafter that he began posting on X, formerly Twitter, blaming the FBI, the deep state, and the hashtag BLMA Antifa terrorist thugs for staging riot cover-up for a stolen election. Miles has then since deactivated his X account. And that is the story of Stephen Charles Miles, a.k.a. Sergeant Miles, the gay porn star turned Proud Boy that attacked the U.S. Capitol.
There we go. That was definitely a change of pace from the normal true crime stories we cover. And I think it was a very interesting turn of events because that was a wild ride from start to finish. Did not know where that was going next. So it was very informative. It was wild. It was fascinating. I think it was a 10 out of 10. I think it was probably one of your best episodes yet.
It is true crime. He did commit a crime. He committed a crime with a lot of people who committed a crime that day.
Yeah, true crime is more than just murders. And so it's always interesting to hear about other types of true crime. And it's always especially interesting to hear about these types of situations, especially when it does involve members of the queer community, because the psychology behind it is just so complex and nuanced and interesting and fascinating, like how like the things people tell themselves or convince themselves to fit a narrative. And so it's just always fascinating to me, the psychology behind the Proud Boys and anyone like that. It's like, how did you get from point A to point Z with nothing in between? And it's wild. It's usually the most wild, off the wall, unhinged crap. And it's like, I just want to know. I hope karma gets you in the ass as soon as possible. But at the same time, I just want to know your mental process to get to where you are now. And I'm assuming Sergeant Miles has not produced any more adult content since his little trip to the White House.
I actually don't know if he did or not. And the other thing that you have to think about
he went to prison for 2 years, I guess.
Well, he just got sentenced in 2023, so I don't know if he's in prison yet or not. You know how that goes.
Or they could cut him a deal and he could get out on parole with it. So, all right. I would be interested. I'm probably going to go Google that right after this. I want to see if he's still posting content. And I want to see people's reactions to it, where they're like, you're not just going to say what you just said and act like we didn't notice.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to remind people is it wasn't just a riot on the Capitol. People died that day.
Yeah, people died during January 6th, so it
was violent, so people died that day.
A lot of people think it's funny to like poke fun of now with like the memes and stuff, but I mean, it really was a very, very serious event and crime, and people did die, so it was a very serious topic to cover, and also a very fascinating one. And I'm sure on the outside looking in from other countries, America didn't look too good that day. So with that, thank you guys again so much for tuning in for another episode of Beers with Queers. Thank you, Brad, for that very informative, very fascinating, very chaotic, in a good way, very chaotic episode. It was very, very fun to learn about that.
You know me, it's either cannibals or porn stars.
Some of our most popular episodes.
It's also things I'm interested in. I don't want to be a cannibal, by the way, just in case you're thinking that.
And so if you guys enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star rating or review on iTunes or Spotify. Helps us out a lot. It helps other people discover the podcast. And of course, we just love hearing from you guys. If you want to see photos from today's case, you can...
And you want to see photos from today's case, trust me, I got plenty. So check out our social media.
On Instagram at Beers with Queers Pod, that's POD, or on Facebook at Beers with Queers, a true crime podcast. And until Monday, stay dangerous out there, my friend. Don't storm the Capitol. See you later.
See you soon.